Even at this late hour, the city park pulsed with a muted vibrancy. Not the drone of insects, a sound more fitting for untamed locales, but the faint susurrus of distant vehicles, the urban heart's steady beat. Alastair Humphrey, as was his nightly ritual, scrupulously followed his charted course, 3 circumnavigations of the park's edge calculated to expend 317 calories and optimize his sleep architecture. He inhaled deeply, the air cleansed by a personal purifier concealed beneath his collar, assuring consistent oxygen levels irrespective of the city's smog index. He valued order, predictability. Disarray was an inefficient variable. Nearing the eastern perimeter, the subtly enhanced lenses of his spectacles sliced through the twilight when he nearly stumbled. A small pile nestled under a weeping willow, a jarring note of color amid the subdued greens and browns. Alastair's brow furrowed. Litter was a civic malfeasance. Adjusting his pace, he prepared to circumvent the offending object, when a sound, reedy and faint, cut through the manufactured calm. A whimper. He paused. He'd categorized the bundle as debris. Now, the sound, profoundly vulnerable, recalibrated his assessment. He approached with caution. It was a baby. A surge of recoil, unexpected and intense, coursed through him. Infants were messy, vociferous, demanding. Biological imperatives he'd purposefully dodged. He retreated slightly. He ought to notify the authorities. That was the pragmatic, logical course. Report the incident and let the system address it. He reached for his calm, fingers betraying a slight tremor. He despised this feeling, this uncertainty. Algorithms rarely presented such confounding inputs. He dialed emergency services, the device hovering near his ear, yet he couldn't bring himself to initiate the call. The infant cried again, a desperate, heartbreaking lament. Alastair glanced back. The willow's fronds, typically so graceful, resembled bony fingers pointing in indictment. Enfolded in a flimsy, soiled blanket, the tiny face was scarlet and contorted. The coverlet seemed woefully inadequate against the clammy night air. He apprehended, with a chilling conviction, the likely outcome of a call. The child would be deposited into a sterile, overburdened facility, lost in the machinery. Another statistic, and something deep within, a dormant, atrophied facet he thought long extinguished, quickened. He terminated the connection. He told himself it was a matter of expedience. The authorities would face delays, paperwork, bureaucracy. He could provide immediate, temporary haven, analyze the situation, and determine the most efficacious strategy. It was a deception, of course, a justification for an impulse defying comprehension. He hesitated, then knelt beside the child, feeling clumsy, awkward. He'd never cradled a baby. A tentative hand reached out, fingers brushing against the delicate skin of a cheek. The crying lessened. Subject, diminutive, he murmured, more to himself. Apparent age, indeterminate, vital signs, exhibiting duress. He gingerly lifted the infant, supporting its head. It felt incredibly weightless, fragile. A shiver traced his spine. He rose, the baby nestled against him. A hospital beckoned, but the prospect of the forms, the inquiries, the intrusion into his carefully curated existence, it was untenable, irrational he knew, yet the decision solidified. He would bring it home. The journey in his automated vehicle crawled by. Alastair sat upright in the rear. Fixated on the infant. He disabled the climate control, fearing it might be too harsh, and the leather upholstery felt uncomfortably humid. The baby, fortunately, had drifted to sleep, its respiration shallow and irregular. The estate materialized ahead, a stark, imposing form against the nocturnal canvas. He directed the vehicle to the discreet service entrance, sidestepping the grand facade. He preferred the staff remain unaware, at least for the moment. He carried the baby inside, his footfalls resounding in the vast, vacant corridors, the residences. Silence, generally a solace, felt oppressive, judgmental. He proceeded to his private study, a haven of order and intellect. He couldn't very well deposit the child in the hallway. He gently settled the baby on the leather settee. Amidst his meticulously organized books and research papers, the contrast was absurd, almost farcical. A tremor of something akin to panic welled up. He required data. A strategy. Activating his computer, he accessed medical databases. He initiated a search on infant care, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. Feeding intervals, nappy changes, sleep cycles, the sheer volume of data overwhelmed him. He felt profoundly ill-equipped. He stole a glance at the baby, slumbering peacefully amid the controlled chaos of his study. A dark tendril had fallen across its brow. Its miniature hand was clenched into a tiny fist. An odd, unfamiliar tug resonated within his chest. He was utterly out of his depth, yet he understood, with a certainty defying logic and reason. that he couldn't simply abandon it. This tiny, forsaken life was now his concern, and somehow, remarkably, that realization didn't inspire trepidation. It evoked something else entirely, something akin to hope. He rechecked the baby's breathing. Mansion nursery. Alistair stared at the tiny human in the oversized crib, a fortress of white lace and plush toys utterly unsuitable for a foundling. He'd managed to secure a bottle from the staff. A sterilized thing filled with formula that looked suspiciously like watered-down paint. Now he had to get the creature to actually consume the concoction. He gently prodded the baby's cheek with a nipple. Nothing. He tried again, a little firmer this time. Still nothing. A whimper escaped the tiny mouth, followed by a full-blown wail that bounced off the high ceilings of what he was now rather absurdly calling the nursery. Right, he muttered, hoisting the baby up. He'd seen mothers do this on the television. He cradled the infant awkwardly, feeling like he was holding a particularly fragile and loud Faberge egg. The wailing intensified, turning into a series of escalating shrieks. There, he repeated, feeling utterly foolish. He jiggled her slightly the way he'd seen it done. More shrieks. He tried humming a tune, something from Bach, figuring it was suitably sophisticated. The shrieks reached a fever pitch that threatened to shatter the crystal chandelier overhead. Alistair was sweating. He glanced at the discarded instruction leaflet for the formula filled with diagrams and indecipherable baby speak. What was a wind? Why did it need breaking? He felt a surge of panic. He, Alistair Humphrey, master of mergers and acquisitions, was being defeated by a being smaller than his forearm. He carefully placed the baby back in the crib, backing away slowly as if she were a venomous snake. The wails subsided slightly, replaced by a series of hiccuping sobs. He fled. He locked himself in his study. The familiar scent of leather and aged paper a comforting balm to his fraying nerves. He booted up his computer, the glow of the screen illuminating the room. He typed baby care into the search engine, and the internet responded with a tidal wave of information. Websites screamed at him in pastel colors, offering advice on everything from colic to cradle cap. He clicked on a forum titled Newborns, a survival guide for the utterly clueless. He scanned the posts, his brow furrowed in concentration. Gas drops. Swaddling techniques? The witching hour? The language was foreign, the concepts bizarre. He spent the next hour lost in a rabbit hole of online research, frantically scribbling notes on a pad of paper. He learned about burping techniques, the importance of tummy time, and the terrifying array of potential ailments that could plague a newborn. He discovered that babies communicated through a complex system of cries, each with its own unique meaning. He felt utterly overwhelmed. He returned to the nursery, armed with his newfound knowledge. Feeling only slightly less incompetent, the baby was still awake, her tiny face red and blotchy. As he approached the crib, a faint gurgling sound emerged from her. He remembered something he'd read online. He carefully picked her up, supporting her head, and positioned her against his shoulder. He gently patted her back. After a few tense moments, a small, surprisingly loud burp erupted. The baby's face relaxed, and she let out a contented sigh. Alistair felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, a warmth that spread through his chest, a sense of accomplishment. He looked at the small, vulnerable creature in his arms. He didn't know where she came from, or why she'd been left alone, but she was here now, in his mansion. In his life. He had to give her something more than just shelter. She needed a name. He thought of the morning he found her, nestled in the park, a tiny beacon of life amidst the fading autumn leaves, and suddenly the name came to him. Hope, he whispered, the sound barely audible above the gentle hum of the ventilation system. I think I'll call you Hope. He looked down at her face, and for the first time, he saw not just a screaming, demanding infant, but a tiny person full of potential, and he, Alistair Humphrey, was now responsible for nurturing that potential, for giving her a chance. It was terrifying, and, he realized, utterly exhilarating. Whispers and headlines. The headline screamed from his tablet screen. Hedge fund honcho, Daddy Dearest? Beneath it, a grainy photograph obviously taken with a zoom lens showed him awkwardly holding Hope outside his front gate. His stomach churned. He swiped it away, but another popped up. Humphrey's hidden heir? The news had legs, and not the cute, wobbly kind. Hope was just beginning to explore. He'd known, intellectually, that the mystery wouldn't stay a secret forever, but the sheer volume, the invasive speculation felt like a physical assault. The doorbell buzzed insistently, and he ignored it, pulling the curtains tighter in the library. Hope, oblivious, gurgled happily, batting at a plush giraffe. He knelt beside her, pushing a stray curl from her forehead. They're silly, aren't they? He murmured. The words meant more for himself than her. The online comments were worse. Some were supportive, praising his generosity. Others were vicious, accusing him of everything from a publicity stunt to something far more sinister. He forced himself to stop reading. This was exactly what he'd feared. His carefully constructed world, built on order and privacy, was crumbling around him. All because of a tiny, innocent baby. He needed help, desperately. He couldn't possibly maintain his business commitments, protect Hope from the media frenzy, and actually, raise her all on his own. The image of Mrs. Higgins, his housekeeper, attempting to soothe the crying Hope while simultaneously directing the caterers for a board meeting flashed through his mind. A professional was required. A nanny. He'd never even considered the concept of a nanny before. His own childhood had been a procession of boarding schools and distant relatives, but Hope deserved better. She deserved someone warm, patient, and experienced, someone who wouldn't crack under pressure. He started his search online, his fingers clumsily navigating the unfamiliar websites, agencies, profiles, background checks. It was overwhelming. He typed "nanny for infant" into the search bar and a flood of results appeared, each promising the perfect Mary Poppins. He clicked on the first one, feeling a growing sense of panic. He didn't know what he was doing. The phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. Rupert, his head of security. He braced himself. "Alistair, we've got photographers camped out on the north side of the property." Rupert's voice was clipped and professional. "They're trying to get shots of the baby. I've increased patrols, but they're persistent." "Thank you, Rupert," Alistair said, his voice tight. "Keep them away." He hung up and looked at Hope. She was chewing happily on the giraffe's ear, her eyes bright and innocent. He couldn't expose her to this. He had to find someone he could trust, someone who could shield her from the chaos. He closed the laptop and stood up, feeling a surge of determination. He needed to be proactive. He couldn't just rely on faceless agencies and online profiles. He needed to use his network, his resources. He picked up the phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Hello? Penelope, it's Alistair Humphrey." Yes, I'm well. Listen, I need your help. It's complicated, but it involves a baby and I need to find the best nanny in the country and I need her yesterday." He could hear Penelope's surprised gasp on the other end of the line. "Alistair, a baby? This is unexpected, but of course, darling, I'll do everything I can. Tell me everything." As he started to explain, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could navigate this. He had resources, he had friends, however distant, and he had an overwhelming need to protect this tiny, unexpected miracle who had turned his world upside down. The battle for Hope's privacy, for her safety, had just begun, and Alistair Humphrey, accustomed to winning, was ready to fight. The nanny's intuition. Clara adjusted the strap of her worn leather bag, the faint scent of lavender from her grandmother's sachets clinging to it. The address was etched in her mind, a sprawling estate that screamed wealth, a world away from her small Brooklyn apartment. She had almost not answered the ad. Nanny wanted discretion assured, generous compensation. It sounded too good to be true, reeking of the kind of privilege that made her stomach churn, but Hope's picture, tucked at the bottom of the ad, had swayed her. A tiny, sleeping face radiating an innocent vulnerability. Alistair Humphrey was taller than she expected, all sharp angles and nervous energy. He gestured her into a drawing room so opulent it felt obscene. Sunlight streamed through enormous windows, illuminating dust motes dancing above plush velvet furniture. He didn't offer her a seat. Pacing instead, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. "Miss Rodriguez, thank you for coming. As you know, this is an unusual situation." His voice was clipped, precise, betraying a deep-seated anxiety. Clara nodded, her gaze sweeping the room. It felt sterile, untouched, like a museum display. "I understand. You're looking for someone to care for Hope." "Yes, precisely, someone with experience, of course. References." He rattled off the requirements as if reciting a memorized list. She handed him her folder, containing glowing letters from previous families. Alistair barely glanced at them. He seemed more preoccupied with the baby monitor sitting on a nearby table. "Hope requires consistency, routine, and, above all, discretion. This is a private matter, Miss Rodriguez, extremely private." Clara met his gaze directly. "My work is always confidential. Humphrey. My priority is the child's well-being." He stopped pacing, a flicker of something akin to relief crossing his face. Good. Then perhaps you'd like to meet her." He led her down a long corridor, the air growing warmer, softer, as they approached the nursery. It was a stark contrast to the rest of the house, filled with bright colors, whimsical mobiles, and the comforting scent of baby powder. Alistair hesitated at the doorway, his hand hovering over the knob. She's sleeping, but you should see her. He opened the door slowly, revealing Hope nestled in a crib, her tiny chest rising and falling rhythmically. Clara approached cautiously, her heart softening. Hope was even more beautiful in person, her skin like porcelain, her dark hair a halo around her face. Alistair stood awkwardly beside her, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He didn't touch her, didn't coo or make silly faces, but Clara saw it, the almost imperceptible softening of his features, the way his eyes lingered on Hope's face. With a mixture of awe and concern, She likes music, he said quietly, almost apologetically. I've been playing classical. Seemed appropriate. Clara smiled. She's beautiful, Mr. Humphrey. You're lucky to have her. He looked at her then, truly looked at her, his blue eyes suddenly vulnerable. I don't know the first thing about babies, Miss Rodriguez. I'm trying. That was it. That was the moment Clara decided to take the job. It wasn't the generous compensation or the promise of privacy. It was the raw, unadulterated fear in his eyes. The desperate plea for help masked beneath a veneer of wealth and privilege. She spent the next hour observing them. Alistair fumbled with a bottle during feeding time, his large hands clumsy and unsure. He read her a board book with a stilted, monotone voice. But Hope gurgled happily, seemingly unfazed. He changed her diaper. With a visible wince, but he did it meticulously and carefully. As she watched him, Clara's initial skepticism began to dissipate. This wasn't a cold, uncaring millionaire who had impulsively adopted a child. This was a man utterly out of his depth, terrified of failing but determined to do right by this little girl. Later, as she packed her bag, Alistair stood by the door, his brow furrowed. So, you'll take the position? Yes, Mr. Humphrey. I will, but I need to be clear. I work for Hope. Her well-being is my only concern. He nodded slowly. Understood. What do you think? Clara paused, choosing her words carefully. I think you have a good heart, Mr. Humphrey, but Hope needs more than just good intentions. She needs love and warmth and someone who knows how to hold her tight. She saw a flash of pain in his eyes, quickly masked. I'll try, he mumbled. Clara smiled gently. I know you will. She looked around the opulent nursery, a feeling of unease settling in her stomach. Something wasn't right. It wasn't just Alistair's awkwardness or the sheer emptiness of the house. It was something else. Something she couldn't quite put her finger on. A feeling of being watched, of secrets lurking in the shadows. As she walked out into the fading sunlight, Clara knew one thing for certain. Hope was safe for now, but her story was far from over, and Clara, with her quiet strength and unwavering intuition, was determined to protect her. Softening edges. The plastic tub of lukewarm water sat precariously on the marble counter. Alistair stared at it like it was a venomous snake. Clara, humming a cheerful tune he didn't recognize, dipped a hand in, testing the temperature with a critical frown. Too cold, she declared, adding a splash of hot water. All right, Mr. Humphrey, your turn. Imagine your Goldilocks. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. He winced, following her instructions. He felt ridiculous, a titan of industry reduced to a puddle of anxiety over a baby bath. Hope, swaddled in a soft towel, watched him with wide, unfocused eyes. He couldn't decipher what she was thinking. And the mystery gnawed at him. Clara patiently guided him through the process, her voice a calming counterpoint to the frantic beat of his own heart. She showed him how to support Hope's delicate head, how to gently wash her with the softest washcloth, how to avoid getting soap in her eyes. Alistair followed her lead, his movements stiff and awkward at first, then slowly, tentatively, gaining confidence. When he finally lifted Hope from the water, wrapped her in a fluffy towel, and held her close, a strange sensation bloomed in his chest. Her skin was soft and warm against his, and the scent of baby powder filled his senses. For the first time since finding her, he felt a flicker of something akin to joy. See? Clara said, her smile radiating warmth. You did great. Now, diaper time, and don't worry, everyone makes mistakes. Even me, though I'm practically a diaper-changing ninja. The diaper change was another exercise in humiliation and awkwardness. He fumbled with the tabs, nearly tearing the delicate material. Clara bit back a laugh, stepping in to correct his mistakes with swift efficiency. Later that evening, after Hope was fed and asleep in her crib, Alistair found Clara in the library reading. He hadn't meant to disturb her, but the image of Hope's trusting gaze kept replaying in his mind. Clara, he said, his voice rough. Thank you, for today, for everything. She looked up, marking her page with a slender finger. You're welcome, Mr. Humphrey, but you're the one doing the work. He hesitated, then sat down in the armchair opposite her. I don't know how to do this, how to be a father. Clara closed her book. Nobody does, Mr. Humphrey. Not at first. It's learned. It's felt. It's about being present, being patient, and letting yourself feel. I'm not good at feeling, he confessed, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. I've spent my life suppressing it, burying it under deals and contracts and things. Clara tilted her head, her eyes filled with a deep understanding. Then maybe hope is here to teach you. To soften those edges. The next few weeks were a blur of feedings, naps, and diaper changes. Alistair, guided by Clara's gentle instruction, slowly began to find his rhythm. He learned to anticipate Hope's needs, to soothe her cries, to make her giggle with silly faces. He even mastered the art of burping her without getting spit up on his designer suits most of the time. One afternoon, Clara caught him singing a tuneless lullaby to Hope while rocking her in his arms. He flushed crimson when he realized he was being observed, but Clara simply smiled. That's a good one, she said. Though maybe we can work on the melody. He found himself laughing, a genuine, unguarded laugh that he hadn't realized he'd forgotten how to make. As Alistair spent more time with Hope, his world began to shift. The sharp edges of his personality seemed to soften, the rigid lines of his life to blur. He found himself drawn to the nursery, lingering over Hope's crib, watching her sleep. He started to cancel meetings, to prioritize playtime over profit margins. He was even starting to learn all the words to Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. One evening, as he tucked Hope into bed, he felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it almost knocked him off his feet. He smoothed a stray curl from her forehead and whispered, "Good night, little one." And in that moment, he knew he was falling in love, not with an idea, or a company, or a possession, but with a tiny human being who had somehow managed to crack open his heart. A mother's recognition. The clatter of dropped silverware punctuated Maya's roiling emotions. Her appetite vanished for days, replaced by a grief that gnawed incessantly. The television mumbled in the background, usually tuned out, another drone of local happenings. But that evening, a face flashed across the screen. Alistair Humphrey, the ubiquitous millionaire, cradling a child. She nearly dismissed it. Another installment in the saga of the super-rich, yet something about the girl's bright, curious gaze arrested her. The anchor's voice spoke of Humphrey finding her abandoned, giving her sanctuary, christening her Hope. A bitter irony, the name felt like a fresh wound. Then, the camera zoomed, filling the screen with Hope's laughing face as she reached for Humphrey's tie. And there it was, just beneath her left ear, partially obscured by a strand of copper hair, a birthmark resided. A miniature crescent, the delicate hue of aged roses. Maya's breath hitched, silverware crashing to the floor, this time unheard. She scrambled for the remote, fingers slipping as she rewound the broadcast. Again, the image, the telltale crescent briefly visible. It couldn't be, reason screamed, but certainty slammed into her. A visceral wave of recognition. It was her, Lily. Her Lily, vanished 5 years prior, now residing in a mansion, known as Hope. The news report continued, casting Humphrey as a benevolent redeemer, a veritable saint. Maya's hands clenched. Saint? He possessed her child, whether cognizant or not. He held the key to her existence, the one thing she had relentlessly sought. Her apartment, once a haven, now resembled a suffocating box. The missing children posters that decorated her walls seemed to taunt her with their unanswered pleas. Each phoned in tip, each pursued lead, had led only to disappointment and heartache. The police, their initial fervor long extinguished, offered dwindling solace. But this felt different. Not a fleeting glimpse, nor a vague recollection. This was Hope, this was Lily. Her crescent moon a luminous beacon. Maya fumbled for her laptop, her hands shaking uncontrollably as she typed. Alistair Humphrey's name unleashed a torrent of images, philanthropic endeavors, business triumphs, lavish displays of wealth. Each photograph ignited her fury, each headline a calculated insult. He basked in the life that rightfully belonged to her daughter. She spent the next hour meticulously sifting through information, absorbing every article, every interview. Humphrey was impenetrable, shielded by a phalanx of lawyers and PR experts, but she had to reach him, expose him to the pictures of Lily she'd taken just before her disappearance, the photographs that clearly revealed the crescent moon, plain as day. Sleep proved elusive. The vision of Hope's face, superimposed with memories of Lily, played like a broken record. She packed a small bag, her movements quick and driven, a change of clothes, the precious few pictures of Lily she hadn't surrendered to the authorities. A threadbare teddy bear Lily had adored. As dawn painted the sky with strokes of coral and gold, Maya stood at the bus stop, clutching a ticket. The bus to Oak Haven, home to Humphrey's opulent estate, represented her first tangible step. She possessed no intricate scheme, no carefully crafted plan, just a burning, unwavering resolve. She would reach her daughter. She would prove the truth. The bus wheezed to a stop, its doors sighing open. As Maya boarded, she cast a backward glance at her apartment. A chilling tendril of doubt snaking through her. What if she was wrong? What if this was another mirage, another devastating letdown? Then she recalled the crescent moon, that faded rose petal stain she had kissed countless times. It wasn't merely a birthmark, it was a bond. A promise she had vowed to Lily, a promise she intended to fulfill. She squared her shoulders, fixing her gaze on the road stretching ahead. This was more than a mere journey, it was a crusade. A crusade for her daughter. Doubt and denial. Doubt coiled around Maya, a constricting serpent. Denial stood firm, an unyielding fortress. Both pressed down as she sat in Mr. Davies's office, a lawyer whose warmth seemed inversely proportional to the richness of his fabric, practically non-existent. The evidence is tenuous, Ms. Rodriguez, Davies said, adjusting his spectacles, the lenses flashing in the light like cold, dismissive eyes. A birthmark, a resemblance that could be coincidental? Mr. Humphrey's guardianship is legally sound. This is an uphill climb, fraught with expenses. Maya's hope plummeted. She'd wagered nearly her entire nest egg on Davies, trusting his reputation to smooth the way. Now he seemed intent on blocking her path. She tightened her grip on the faded photograph of Elena taken just before her disappearance. Elena with the same spark of mischief that now ignited Hope's gaze, but the DNA analysis, she began, her voice wavering. Davies exhaled, a deflating sigh. The judge rejected the motion. He cited the child's right to privacy, given the flimsy basis for your claim. Privacy? What of a child robbed of her true kin, living a fabrication? The injustice stung Maya's throat. She needed another avenue. Alastair Humphrey surveyed his meticulously kept grounds. The breeze playfully teasing his sculpted hair. He watched Hope flit after butterflies, her joyous peals filling the air. It was a melody that had gradually filled the hollow chambers of his soul, a melody he would defend fiercely. The lawyer's letter had arrived that morning, the gall of it, the baseless accusation had sparked a glacial rage within him. He crushed the paper in his hand, the legalistic language failing to obscure the threat it posed. He wouldn't permit this woman, this interloper, to shatter Hope's world, their world. She would not get near her. He turned to Jenkins, his security chief, a man carved from granite and just as impassive. Increase security, Alastair commanded, his tone precise and sharp. Surveillance on all access points, intensified patrols around the perimeter, and a deep dive into anyone who's been close to the property in the last month. I want zero margin for error. Jenkins affirmed with a curt nod, his gaze unwavering. Understood, Emmer. Humphrey. It will be done. Alastair watched Jenkins depart, his resolve hardening like steel. He was a man accustomed to dominion, to molding his reality to his will. He had built his empire on it, and he would safeguard Hope with that same implacable force. Back in her small apartment, Maya gazed at the towering stack of documents, old reports, faded flyers, cherished family snapshots, each a monument to Elena's lost presence, a presence that deserved recognition, a daughter who deserved homecoming. She opened her laptop, the screen illuminating her face. She needed to circumvent the legal obstacles to establish her link to Hope outside the courtroom. She recalled Elena's stories of their grandmother's unique lullaby, a melody echoing through generations. Could Hope possibly know the tune? The notion was a gamble, perhaps even a futile one, but it was all that remained. She began searching for local groups for kids, anything that might place her within earshot of Hope. Simultaneously, at the Humphrey estate, Hope, nestled on Alastair's lap, a well-loved copy of The Velveteen Rabbit spread between them. He narrated the tale, his voice softening as he turned the pages, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He was acutely conscious of the enhanced security. The ever-watchful cameras, the guards pacing the boundaries. It felt invasive, stifling, but essential. He would leave nothing to chance. Hope, noticing his distraction, tugged at his sleeve. Grandpa, gain. Tell it gain. Alastair manufactured a smile, suppressing the dread that clawed at him. He would shelter her from the darkness, from the woman who dared to claim her. He would be her guardian, her haven. He had to be. He started the story anew. His voice marginally steadier this time, but beneath the surface the denial was beginning to fray, revealing a chink of uncertainty, a terrifying possibility he refused to voice, the weight of truth. The aroma of aged paper and lemon wax clung to Clara as she navigated the library's maze of microfiche. The machine's drone and the whisper of film were the only sounds interrupting her focused silence, her quest to uncover Maya's past. A life hidden before Alastair Humphrey entered the frame. Each search felt like a violation, a crack in the sanctuary she'd labored to build. Yet, the seed of suspicion Maya's fragmented memories had sown had sprouted, its tendrils now entwined around Clara's. conscience demanding answers. Days became a blur of research, neglected dinners sat untouched as Clara pursued phantoms through forgotten records and bygone news. Then, a glimmer. A faded photograph in a local rag from 15 years prior. Missing child alert, Isabella Flores, age 3. The likeness to Maya, diminished by the pixelated image and time's relentless march, resonated deeply. The same wide, innocent eyes, the same subtle curve defining her jawline. The article mentioned Isabella's mother, Elena Flores, a struggling single parent last spotted near Oakhaven Park, the very place Alastair professed to have discovered Maya. An icy wave of apprehension crashed over Clara. This was no mere coincidence, no simple tale of abandonment. This reeked of a planned deception, a charade carefully constructed. Returning to the mansion, the grandiose foyer felt like a jeering stage. Each gleaming surface, each deliberately placed floral arrangement seemed a layer of deceit masking what lay beneath. She found Alastair in his study. Immersed in the amber glow of a desk lamp, blueprints and architectural models surrounded him, his brow creased in concentration. He looked up, his features softening at the sight of her. "Clara, darling, what is it? You look unwell." Clara extended the news clipping, its delicate paper a stark contrast against the polished mahogany beneath. "I need an explanation, Alastair." He accepted the paper, his gaze sweeping across the article. A fleeting, indiscernible expression flickered across his face before settling into practiced composure. "Where did you unearth this?" "That's irrelevant. What is relevant is that this child, Isabella, bears a striking resemblance to Maya, and her mother was last seen near Oakhaven Park." Alastair sighed, raking a hand through his impeccable hair. "Clara, you're allowing yourself to spiral. Coincidences occur, countless children go missing every year. But this feels different. Maya has confided things, Alastair, memories that shouldn't be hers if she were simply left behind. Fleeting glimpses of another existence, another name." He rose, his tone sharpening. "Maya's experienced trauma. She's prone to flights of fancy, to fabricating narratives to fill the gaps in her memory. You're aware of this. I rescued her, Clara. I offered her a home, a family. And you buried her history," Clara countered, her voice gaining volume. "You never bothered searching for her kin, did you? You simply decided she belonged to you." Alastair turned away, presenting his back. "I acted in her best interest. I shielded her." "From what, Alastair, or whom?" Clara moved closer, her tone softening, laced with entreaty. "I understand your protective instincts, your desire to safeguard her, but Maya has the right to know her truth, irrespective of how agonizing it may be. As do I." Silence descended, heavy and oppressive. The measured ticking of a grandfather clock echoed from the hallway, each beat a percussive blow against the mansion's precarious harmony. Finally, Alastair pivoted, his face etched with fatigue. "What do you propose, Clara?" "A DNA comparison between Maya and Elena Flores. We need definitive proof." He met her gaze, a mixture of anger, surrender, and perhaps apprehension swirling within his eyes. "That's an extreme measure." "The necessary measure, Alastair, for Maya, for Elena, and for my own peace of mind. I can't continue living under this cloud of uncertainty." He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply. When he reopened them, the fight had seemingly drained away. "Very well," he acquiesced, his voice a bare murmur. "Very well, Clara. We'll proceed with the testing." The gravity of the revelation, undeniable and weighty, permeated the room, an undeniable presence neither could ignore. A new beginning. The courier's hand trembled slightly as he presented the sealed envelope. Alastair took it, the crisp paper a stark contrast to the sudden clamminess of his palms. He didn't break the seal immediately. He looked at Hope, who was busy constructing a tower of blocks, her brow furrowed in concentration. He wanted to shield her from whatever lay within, to preserve this bubble of normalcy a little longer. "Alastair?" Mrs. Higgins, his housekeeper, asked softly. She hovered in the doorway, her face etched with concern. He offered her a weak smile. "Just a moment, Mrs. Higgins." He needed to be alone for this. He went to his study, the familiar scent of leather and old books doing little to soothe his nerves. With a deep breath, he sliced open the envelope. The report was concise, unambiguous. The language was sterile, scientific, but the implications were profoundly human. Probability of maternity, 99.99%. Maya was Hope's mother. The room seemed to shrink, the opulent furnishings pressing in on him. He sank into his leather chair, the report fluttering to the floor. He had fought so hard, convinced himself that he was protecting Hope from a woman he deemed unfit, but the truth, undeniable and stark, stared back at him from the page. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations and soul-searching. Alastair found himself staring out the window for hours, watching the city lights twinkle like distant promises. He had built his life on order, on control. Now, everything felt chaotic, adrift. He knew what he had to do. But the thought of letting hope go, of severing the bond they had forged, was like tearing a piece of himself away. The courtroom was cold and impersonal. Maya sat across from him, her eyes red-rimmed but filled with a quiet resolve he hadn't seen before. Her lawyer spoke, outlining the facts. The evidence. Alistair's lawyer rose, his voice calm and measured, but instead of the expected arguments, the challenges, he simply stated, Mr. Humphrey withdraws his claim for custody. A collective gasp filled the room. Maya looked at Alistair, her expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning understanding. He met her gaze, offering a small, almost imperceptible nod. The judge, clearly surprised, confirmed Alistair's decision. The proceedings were adjourned. Afterward, Maya approached him. Alistair, I don't know what to say. He held up a hand. There's nothing to say, Maya, this is what's best for Hope. He managed a strained smile. I only ask that I can still be a part of her life, that I can see her, watch her grow. Maya's eyes glistened. Of course, Alistair. Of course. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Alistair, surprisingly, took charge of finding Maya and Hope a new home. He insisted on a small cottage on the outskirts of the city. With a fenced-in garden and plenty of room for Hope to play. He oversaw the renovations, ensuring it was safe and comfortable, a haven for them both. He chose the furniture, the softest blankets, the brightest toys. He even planted a small rose bush in the garden, remembering Hope's fascination with the roses in his own. He drove Maya and Hope to their new home, the back of his car overflowing with boxes. As he helped Maya unload, he saw Hope skip into the garden, her laughter echoing through the air. He watched her, his heart aching with a bittersweet mixture of joy and loss. That evening, after Hope was asleep, Alistair sat with Maya in her small kitchen. The air was filled with the aroma of freshly brewed tea. Thank you, Alistair, Maya said softly, her voice thick with emotion. For everything. He shrugged. I just wanted to make sure she was safe, happy. He paused, then added, and you too, Maya. He knew he couldn't simply walk away. He still felt responsible for Hope, for her well-being. He decided to channel his energy, his resources, into something meaningful. He established a foundation dedicated to providing safe and nurturing environments for vulnerable children. He visited orphanages, hospitals, shelters, listening to their stories, understanding their needs. He funded programs for early childhood education, healthcare, and foster care. He found a new purpose, a new way to protect the innocent, to give them the chance at a brighter future. It wasn't the life he had envisioned, but it was a life filled with meaning, with purpose. And in the quiet moments, when he held Hope in his arms or watched her play in the garden, he knew he had made the right choice. He had given her the chance at a new beginning, and in doing so, he had found one for himself.